In that capacity, he was not only called upon to review military contracts with universities and write opinions on such topics as the legality of using civilian prisoners in potentially fatal military experiments, but also to participate in arranging public lands for atomic experiments. Shortly after the creation of the OSRD in 1942, a new intelligence agency was established, the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, forerunner of the Central Intelligence Agency. Having by then received a commission in the Navy, Donovan left the Office of Scientific Research and Development and was detailed to the OSS. Toward the conclusion of the war, he was designated Chief of the War Crimes Unit within the OSS and given the responsibility for overseeing the collection and organization of data concerning Nazi atrocities. It was a smooth transition for him then, after Germany surrendered, to fill the role of one of the prosecutors at the first war crimes trial in Nuremberg. Still a member of the OSS, Donovan was given the task of organizing and presenting the shocking and effective photographic evidence against the major Nazi leaders and their organizations that contributed to their eventual criminal convictions. Donovan returned home after completing his prosecutorial task in Nuremberg and commenced the private practice of law, specializing in insurance. It was during this time, when the Cold War and espionage were ever-present realities, that a high-ranking Soviet spy, Rudolf Abel, entered the United States for the purpose of obtaining military and atomic secrets. After Abel was captured in 1957, Donovan's legal reputation was such that he was asked to defend the Soviet spy in criminal proceedings in the United States District Court in Brooklyn, New York. He took on this unpopular cause out of principle and provided such a meritorious defense that the outcome was only decided by the Supreme Court of the United States. Donovan's legal ability finally did not forestall a conviction for his client, but it spared Abel from the death penalty. Donovan's prophetic argument to the sentencing judge that the court should spare Abel's life against the possibility that an American might be similarly situated in the future in the Soviet Union, an American for whom Abel could be traded, was soon realized in the capture of U-2 pilot Francis Gary Powers. Working with the knowledge of the Central Intelligence Agency, but as a private citizen, Donovan made several trips inside East Berlin in order to negotiate the trade of Rudolf Abel, not only for Francis Gary Powers, but also for two other Americans who Donovan had learned were in Soviet jails. He negotiated alone, usually under dangerous circumstances, and was successful. Although the U-2 affair was an occasion for some embarrassment to the United States and resulted in the cancellation of an international summit, it paled in comparison to the humiliation of the United States in the aftermath of the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961. The United States had trained Cuban refugees in a Latin American camp, encouraged the invasion of Cuba by these forces, and once this invasion began, failed to provide adequate support for the troops. 114 Cubans were killed, and more than 1,000 were captured by Fidel Castro's forces. The survivors were tried, fined, and imprisoned. An initial attempt to negotiate for the prisoners by a civilian Tractors for Freedom committee failed, despite the participation of such notable figures as David Eisenhower and Eleanor Roosevelt. As time passed, fears grew on the part of families of the invaders for the health and survival of their loved ones. Moreover, the responsibility for the failed invasion gnawed at President Kennedy, who had authorized it. As a result, when the new Cuban Families Committee for the Liberation of Prisoners of War approached the president's brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, he suggested that they ask James Donovan to intercede with Castro for the prisoners' release, since he had been so successful in the recent Soviet negotiations for the return of Powers. And, over the course of several months, Donovan did just that. He did so in the face of a quarantine of Cuba after the discovery of Soviet missiles on the island, and he did so at great personal peril, not only because of hostile Cuban military leaders, but also because of a secret CIA plot to kill Castro using Donovan as an unwitting intermediary. The presentation of the negotiations following the quarantine is based on original records maintained by Donovan, and the fresh new details of the CIA plot are based on interviews with one who was present with Donovan at the time. It was in large part Donovan's sincerity, charm, and wit that engrossed Castro and enabled the discussions to continue to a successful conclusion. The result